excruciating pain. It was as if every bone in his body had been crushed and then crudely pieced back together, each breath pulling at a searing agony. Lin Xian regained consciousness amidst a hazy chaos. Before he even opened his eyes, a strong herbal scent, mixed with a faint metallic tang of blood, permeated his nostrils. Senior disciple brother. He'll be all right, won't he? A timid female voice spoke up not far away, though her tone lacked conviction. What could possibly happen to him? He's got a thick skin. Junior disciple brother Yi, on the other hand, suffered such a fright and was almost injured by that demonic beast. His mind is still unstable. Another slightly sharp female voice immediately chimed in, her words full of resentment. It's all senior disciple brother's fault for not protecting junior disciple brother Yi. A torrent of chaotic memories, like a bursting dam, surged into Lin Xian's mind. Lin Xian, an ordinary young man from modern society, had actually transmigrated. And wouldn't you know it, he had transmigrated into a cultivation novel he had flipped through a few pages of before bed, becoming the senior disciple brother with the same name as him. A character who was essentially a top-tier tragic cannon fodder. In the original novel, this senior disciple brother had good talent, was diligent, fiercely loyal to his honored master, and very protective of his junior brothers and sisters, especially the much-loved junior disciple brother Yi Chun, whom his senior disciple brother treated almost like a blood brother. During every trial, he would always rush to the front to shield Yi Chun from wind and rain. But what was the result? His honored master only had eyes for the intelligent and endearing Yi Chun. All the junior sisters also flocked around Yi Chun. All the senior disciple brother's efforts were taken for granted. Once Yi Chun had even the slightest mishap, no matter the reason, the first one to be held accountable was always him, the senior disciple brother. And this time, it was during a low-level mystic realm trial organized by the sect. Yi Chun, ignoring all warnings, insisted on venturing deep into a dangerous area to gather a spiritual herb, which resulted in attracting a powerful demonic beast equivalent to a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. The original senior disciple brother fought desperately, protecting Yi Chun at the cost of severe injuries, and was himself left nearly at his life's end due to his wounds. But now, waking up, what he heard wasn't concern, but accusations. A suffocating, twisting pain came from his chest, the residual grievance and indignation of the original owner, deeply rooted in his soul. Lin Xian suddenly opened his eyes. What met his gaze was an ancient hall ceiling, and beneath him, a cold stone bed. He was in an annex of the Qingyun sect's chief disciple hall, purportedly for recuperation, yet it was so desolate that there wasn't even a servant to attend to him. Not far away stood two young girls dressed in inner disciple robes. His second junior sister, Su Ru, and third junior sister, Lu Xian. The previous conversation had come from their mouths. Seeing Lin Xian awake, a flicker of unnaturalness crossed Su Ru's, the sharp female voice, face, but it was quickly replaced by displeasure. Senior disciple brother, you're finally awake. What were you thinking? You knew junior disciple brother Ye's cultivation was shallow, so why didn't you stick closer? You caused him to— Enough! A voice so calm it was almost indifferent interrupted Su Ru's complaints. Lin Xian propped himself up on his arms, slowly sitting upright. The intense pain caused cold sweat to bead on his forehead, but his eyes were filled with an unprecedented clarity and coldness. This single word, enough, not only stunned Su Ru and Lu Xian, but also gave Lin Xian himself a jolt. The original owner would never have spoken to his junior sisters in such a tone. He was always gentle, even somewhat ingratiating. Su Ru felt a little unnerved by his cold gaze, but forced herself to compose. Senior disciple brother Yi. What kind of attitude is that? We're also worried about junior disciple brother Yi. Why am I lying here, severely wounded? Lin Xian didn't answer, but instead faintly posed a question. Lu Xian, the timid female voice, subconsciously replied, It was to save junior disciple brother Yi, injured by that blaze flame leopard. Oh, Lin Xian nodded, his gaze sweeping over the two of them. Then why have you come here? Is it to check on my injuries? Or to remind me how to better shield junior disciple brother Yi next time? His tone was calm and devoid of emotion, yet it felt like cold needles, pricking Su Ru and Lu Xian, making their faces flush crimson. Only then did they realize that from the moment they entered until now, they hadn't asked a single question about their senior disciple brother's injuries, their minds completely preoccupied with junior disciple brother Ye's fright. Senior disciple brother. How can you say that? Su Ru was a little exasperated. We naturally came to see you. It's just that junior disciple brother Yi also needs someone by his side. If that's the case, then go tend to your junior disciple brother Yi. Lin Xian lay back down, turning his back to them, his voice tinged with deep fatigue, not of the body, but of the soul. I'm tired and need quiet recuperation. Unless it's a major sect matter, there's no need to seek me out again. Su Ru wanted to say more, but Lu Xian gently tugged her sleeve. Lu Xian looked at the resolute back of her senior disciple brother, and for the first time, an inexplicable panic welled up in her heart, as if something, which they had never paid attention to, had completely changed. The two eventually left the annex, somewhat disgruntled, their footsteps fading into the distance. In the empty annex, only Lin Xian remained. He looked at the gloomy sky outside the window. The original owner's memories of being ignored, wronged, and making countless efforts that yielded no genuine sincerity flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern. Diligently serving the sect was worth less than a few sweet words from the junior disciple brother. Risking life and limb for junior sisters was worth less than a small trinket from the junior disciple brother. Solving problems for the honored master. Any mistake meant incompetence, and credit always went to the junior disciple brother. Ridiculous, pathetic, lamentable. Even before his death, the original owner had still yearned for a word of affirmation from his honored master, a hint of concern from his junior sisters. But now, dwelling in this body was Lin Xian, a soul from another world. A sycophant's end is never good. Lin Xian muttered to himself, a cold, self-mocking curve forming on his lips. From today onwards, that senior disciple brother who toiled without complaint and craved recognition from others is dead. He slowly raised his hand, feeling the remaining, rather decent cultivation foundation within this body, and an unprecedented fire ignited in his eyes. In this life, I, Lin Xian, will live only for myself. What master-disciple affection, what fellow-disciple camaraderie, what damn plotline, all of you can get lost. I have only one goal. His gaze seemed to pierce through the hall ceiling, looking towards the ethereal heavens above. To achieve the Tao, to become an immortal, an invisible aura silently spread from him. That cultivation barrier, which had been shaky due to years of unrewarded efforts, actually let out a crack at this moment, showing signs of loosening. His inner demon was gone, his Tao heart nascent. Lin Xian's immortal path officially began from this moment, and the Qingyun's sex heaven, too, was about to change. The annex of the chief disciple hall became completely quiet. Lin Xian welcomed the solitude. He spent half a day using inner vision to examine the condition of his body. Although his injuries were severe, the original owner had a solid foundation, and after his transmigration, his soul power seemed to have strengthened, making his recovery speed much faster than anticipated. What surprised him even more was that the cultivation techniques and vital points from the original owner's memories, which had previously been somewhat obscure and difficult to understand, now appeared much clearer and more explicit in his mind. This might be a benefit of the two souls merging, a quicker mind and higher comprehension. Since I'm going to live for myself, this cultivation base is my only reliance. Lin Xian's gaze was resolute. The Qingyun art, cultivated by the original owner, was a mainstream technique of the Qingyun sect, upright and balanced, but slow in progress and overly focused on foundation without sufficient offensive power. In the dog-eat-dog world of immortal cultivation, this was not the best choice. He needed stronger cultivation techniques. He needed methods that could rapidly enhance his strength. Early the next morning, with his injuries slightly stabilized, Lin Xian changed into a clean set of ordinary disciple robes and quietly left the desolate chief disciple hall, heading towards the sect's scripture pavilion. The Qinyan sect scripture pavilion was situated on a cloud-shrouded peak, with upturned eaves and intricate dugong brackets, ancient and grand. It housed thousands of years of the sect's accumulated knowledge, an important place for disciples to acquire knowledge and seek opportunities. Unlike before, Lin Xian's visit this time was no longer to help his junior brothers and sisters find suitable cultivation techniques or to consult ancient texts for his honored master. His goal was clear and pure, to find a way to become stronger faster. He bypassed the crowded lower-level cultivation technique sections and headed directly to the upper floors, which contained miscellaneous studies, travelogues, and some obscure and unorthodox classics. The lighting here was dim. The bookshelves were covered with a thin layer of dust, and few people usually visited. In a corner stacked with ancient bamboo slips, Lin Xian stopped, carefully pulled out a scroll detailing fragments of ancient body refinement techniques, and began to study it. The original owner's memory contained little knowledge of such unorthodox paths, but Lin Xian, from an era of information explosion, knew that sometimes unconventional methods could yield surprising results. Just as he was absorbed in his reading, a slightly aged voice sounded beside him. The 9 Revolutions Body Tempering Art? TSK. It's fragmented beyond repair, and the cultivation method is extremely perilous. A slight mistake could lead to severed meridians. Young man, don't bite off more than you can chew. Reaching too high isn't a good thing. Lin Xian looked up to see an old man with white hair and beard, dressed in simple gray linen robes, leisurely sweeping dust between the bookshelves with a worn-out broom. The old man's face was ordinary, his eyes murky, making him look like the most common old handyman. But Lin Xian's heart stirred. The library was an important place. How could an old sweeping handyman recognize this obscure body-refining technique at a glance, and even point out its dangers? He put down the bamboo slip, bowed respectfully, and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Senior. I just feel that among the 3,000 great Taoists, there isn't necessarily only one smooth path. Sometimes a seemingly perilous road might lead to a different world altogether." The old man's sweeping motion paused slightly. His cloudy eyes glanced at Lin Xian, a flicker of imperceptible surprise in them. He had seen too many young disciples come here, either arrogant and dismissive or timid and hesitant. One who maintained humility while possessing independent insight like this was rare. Interesting. The old man chuckled softly, casually pointing his broom handle towards an inconspicuous bookshelf in another direction. Over there are some wild Zen teachings on divine sense application. Though they may not be suitable for grand halls, they might have an unexpected positive effect on certain stubborn cultivation methods. With that, the old man paid no further attention to Lin Xian, continuing to sweep slowly, his figure gradually disappearing into the depths of the bookshelves. Lin Xian's heart was solemn, and he bowed again. "Thank you for the guidance, Senior." He walked to the bookshelf the old man had indicated and indeed found several dusty beast-skin booklets whose titles were almost illegible. Upon flipping through them, he found they recorded some non-mainstream divine sense application techniques. They seemed absurd, but when combined with some of his past life's thought patterns, he found them quite insightful. One cannot judge a book by its cover. This azure cloud sect truly harbors hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Lin Xian silently memorized the contents of these booklets, filled with curiosity and gratitude for the sweeping old man. This was perhaps the first opportunity he had encountered since transmigrating. Just as he was about to continue searching for other useful ancient texts, a familiar and urgent voice sounded behind him. "Senior brother, I finally found you." Lin Xian turned around to see his third junior sister, Lu Xian, walking quickly towards him, a hint of anxiety on her face. "Senior brother, you've made us look everywhere." Why did you come to this corner? Lin Xian's expression was calm. Consulting ancient texts. Is something the matter? Lu Xian was choked by his indifferent attitude, but quickly said, It's junior brother Yi. He's preparing to refine a batch of condensing liquid pills to break through the late qi refining bottleneck. But he's missing a key ingredient, 100-year green spirit vine. The supply in the storeroom is depleted, and, senior brother, don't you have a lot of sect contribution points? Lend them to junior brother Yi for an emergency. If he succeeds in refining the pills, he might even give you one. It was like this again. Such a matter-of-fact tone, as if his Lin Xian's contribution points were born for Yi Chun. If it were the original owner, he would undoubtedly take out his identity jade token without hesitation, and even ask with concern if Yi Chun lacked any other supplementary herbs. But at this moment, Lin Xian just quietly looked at Lu Xian until she started to feel somewhat uneasy. Then, he slowly spoke, his voice clear and calm. My contribution points are for another use. I need to exchange them for the 9th level of the basic body refining technique. The basic body refining technique was the most fundamental and least valued body refining cultivation method in the sect. Its cultivation process was painful and slow, and almost no one would waste precious contribution points to exchange for its higher levels. Lu Xian was stunned, almost thinking she had misheard. As senior brother? What did you say? Body refining technique? What uses that thing? Of course, junior brother Ye's pills are more important. I believe my cultivation advancement is more important. Lin Xian's tone was unperturbed. If junior sister has nothing else, I will continue to consult the ancient texts. With that, he turned around, refocusing his attention on the ancient book in his hands, completely leaving Lu Xian aside. Lu Xian opened her mouth, looking at senior brother's resolute and unfamiliar back. A huge sense of grievance and disbelief welled up in her heart. Senior brother, he actually refused? For that useless body refining technique, he refused junior brother Ye's urgent need? She stood rooted to the spot, unable to advance or retreat, her face turning pale then flushed. Finally, she stamped her foot and, filled with grievance and resentment, turned and ran away quickly. The library returned to quiet once more. Lin Xian's finger gently brushed the dust from the pages, his gaze unwavering. From now on, all his resources, all his energy, would only serve Lin Xian's path to immortality. What did the affairs of others have to do with him? Outside the Azure Cloud sect's outer sect plaza, people bustled, and the atmosphere was lively. The annual sect minor competition was an important stage for outer sect disciples to showcase their strength and strive for an opportunity to enter the inner sect. It also attracted many inner sect disciples and even elders to watch. In the past, as the chief senior brother, Lin Xian would undoubtedly have been arranged by his master to maintain order on site, guiding his junior brothers and sisters, keeping him incredibly busy. But this time, he appeared alone and quietly in an inconspicuous corner on the edge of the plaza, only when the competition was about to begin. He was still wearing his ordinary disciple robes, his face slightly pale due to his unhealed injuries, but his back was ramrod straight, and his eyes were calm and unmoving, completely out of place with the bustling surroundings. On the high platform, Master Qing Lung, immortal venerable, sat in the main seat, her expression indifferent. Second junior sister Su Ru and third junior sister Lu Xian stood to her left and right, their gazes occasionally sweeping the stage below, seemingly searching for something. When they saw Lin Xian in the corner, Su Ru couldn't help but curl her lips, whispering to Lu Xian, "Humph, I thought he was seriously injured. It seems he's deliberately slacking off, unwilling to even contribute to the minor competition." Lu Xian remembered her encounter in the library yesterday, her heart still heavy, and did not reply, only glancing at Lin Xian with a complex expression. The minor competition proceeded in an orderly fashion. Soon, it was Lin Xian's turn to enter the arena. His opponent was an outer sect disciple known for his bravery, named Zhao Hu, whose cultivation had reached the 8th level of qi refining. His mountain-splitting palm technique was incredibly fierce, and he had won 2 consecutive matches in the previous rounds, his momentum soaring. It's senior brother Lin Xian. Are senior brother's injuries healed? Why does he look unwell? His opponent is Zhao Hu. That guy has no sense of restraint when he fights. Senior brother shouldn't suffer a loss. Zhao, who looked at the pale-faced Lin Xian, cupped his fists and said, "Senior brother, please enlighten me. However, fists and feet have no eyes, and you are injured. If you can't hold on, just admit defeat." His words sounded polite, but carried a hint of disdain, convinced that Lin Xian's severe injuries had not healed, and his strength was greatly diminished. Lin Xian was not angered. He merely nodded slightly. "Please." With the referee's command, Zhao Hu let out a low growl, spiritual energy erupting around him. He charged like a tiger unleashed, his palms striking towards Lin Xian's face with whistling wind. It was his signature mountain-splitting palms opening move, aiming for a quick victory. Everyone below held their breath. Suru even instinctively clenched her hands. Although she complained verbally, seeing that senior brother might make a fool of himself in public still made her feel a little uncomfortable. However, facing this fierce attack, Lin Xian did not dodge or meet it head-on as everyone expected. He simply stood still until the moment the palm wind almost struck his body. His foot then shifted slightly, and his figure ghost-like moved half a foot to the side, perfectly evading the powerful blow. The movement was concise, precise, without an ounce of redundancy. Zhao Hu's palm missed, its force spent. Startled, he was about to change his move when he saw Lin Xian's fingers converge like a sword. A wisp of extremely condensed azure, spiritual energy flickered at his fingertip, striking with lightning speed at Zhao Hu's exposed ribcage, a vulnerability created by his forward momentum. This finger strike was fast, accurate, ruthless. There were no fancy moves, no grand aura, only the utmost efficiency and precise timing. Chapter 5. With a soft sound, Zhao Hu's forward momentum abruptly stopped. He froze in place as if fixed by a spell, his face filled with an expression of disbelief. He felt a sharp surge of vital energy penetrate his body, instantly locking down the spiritual energy circulation in half of his body, leaving him utterly powerless. One move. No. Strictly speaking, Lin Xian only used one finger. The entire arena fell silent instantly. Everyone's eyes widened, unable to believe what they were seeing. Zhao Hu, an 8th-level qi refining cultivator, couldn't even withstand one move from Lin Xian. Moreover, Lin Xian wasn't using the Azure Cloud Sword art he was previously skilled in at all, but a technique they had never seen before, so simple it was almost ruthless. On the high platform, Qing Lung Immortal Venerables, always indifferent eyes, finally showed a flicker of emotion. She sat up slightly, her gaze sharp as she looked at the pale-faced disciple on the stage. That finger strike, just now, the sword intended contained was so pure and condensed. This was absolutely not Lin Xian's style of the past. Su Ru and Lu Xian were even more astonished, their mouths agape. The senior brother in their memory had a steady and grand sword style, emphasizing righteousness. When did he become so sharp and efficient? This fighting style, with a calm indifference to everything, made them feel unfamiliar, even a little frightened. Lin Xian retracted his finger, not even looking at the frozen Zhao Hu. He gave a slight bow to the referee, then turned and walked off the arena. From beginning to end, his expression remained unchanged, as if he had just done a trivial thing. It was only after his figure disappeared beyond the outskirts of the crowd that the plaza erupted into a clamor. What has happened? How did Zhao Hu lose? Senior disciple. When did senior disciple become so powerful? That finger strike was terrifying. I didn't even see it clearly. Isn't senior disciple still recovering from serious injuries? He doesn't look injured at all. Discussions, exclamations, and doubts intertwined. Lin Xian, in the simplest and most direct way, declared his transformation to everyone. On the high platform, The cool and aloof immortal venerable watched the direction Lin Xian had vanished, her brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. For the first time, a strong urge to explore this eldest disciple, always considered stable and reliable but lacking spirituality, arose within her. Meanwhile, Su Ru and Lu Xian exchanged glances, both seeing immense confusion and a hint of unease in each other's eyes. Senior disciple, it seemed, was truly completely different from before. This difference was not merely in strength, but also in his unfathomable gaze and aloof demeanor. The senior disciple they had habitually relied on seemed to be drifting away from their world at a speed they couldn't comprehend. The stunning finger strike at the sect's minor competition was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, sending ripples throughout the Azure Cloud sect. The usual bustle and trivialities surrounding Lin Xian seemed to vanish overnight. When disciples saw him again, their eyes held more reverence and curiosity, and less of the accustomed casualness. Even several inter-sect junior brothers who usually sought his guidance became hesitant, not daring to approach easily. Lin Xian was content with the peace. He spent most of his time in the side hall of the chief disciple's residence, recovering from his injuries while also digesting what he had gained from the scripture pavilion, especially the divine sense application techniques subtly mentioned by the sweeping elder, which gave him a completely new understanding of spiritual energy control. However, even when the tree desires calm, the wind continues to blow. Early this morning, Lin Xian was practicing a basic sword technique in the courtyard, honing his control over his newfound strength, striving to utilize every ounce of power precisely. Suddenly, a rush of hurried footsteps approached from afar, accompanied by a tearful cry. Senior disciple, this is bad. Junior disciple. Junior disciple, Yi is in trouble. Lin Xian sheathed his sword and stood upright, his brows slightly furrowed. It was the third junior sister, Lu Xian. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, full of panic. Why the panic? Lin Xian's tone remained calm, betraying no ripple of emotion. Junior disciple. He forcibly attempted to break through the late-stage qi refinement bottleneck last night, but his spiritual energy went awry and injured his meridians. He's vomiting blood incessantly. Master is currently treating him, but Lu Xian spoke incoherently in her haste. Master said that if someone with pure cultivation could assist, guiding his spiritual energy, it might alleviate the situation. Senior disciple, your Azure Cloud art is the purest. Please go and help junior disciple Yi. It was Yi Chen again. Lin Xian sneered inwardly. Forcibly attempting to break through a bottleneck was undoubtedly a reckless act, and he should bear the consequences himself. Now that trouble had arisen, he was expected to clean up the mess. Seeing Lin Xian's silence, Lu Xian grew even more anxious, stepping forward to grab his sleeve. Senior disciple, what time is it? Why are you still standing there stunned? Hurry and come with me. Lin Xian sidestepped her hand and said indifferently, my injuries are not yet healed, and my own spiritual energy is still unstable. I fear I cannot undertake this task. There are many elders in the sect. It would be more prudent for Master to seek assistance from a more capable person. Lu Xian could hardly believe her ears. Senior disciple, you, how can you say that? Junior disciple Yi is your fellow disciple. You are the chief disciple now. You should. Chief disciple? Lin Xian interrupted her, a faint hint of sarcasm playing on his lips. The duty of a chief disciple is to handle sect affairs and supervise disciples' cultivation, not to be a personal healer for a specific individual. You, Lu Xian trembled with anger. Senior disciple, you've become too cold-blooded. If anything untoward happens to junior disciple Yi, just then, a wave of icy pressure descended abruptly, and the cool and aloof immortal venerable's figure appeared silently at the courtyard entrance. Her face was covered in frost, her gaze piercing Lin Xian like a sharp sword, her voice laced with suppressed anger. Lin Xian, a fellow disciple, is in danger, yet you stand here making excuses and watching with cold eyes? How did I usually teach you? Brotherly affection and mutual assistance. Have you forgotten it all? If Yi Chun comes to harm, you, as chief disciple, cannot escape blame. These familiar accusations, like the last straw, crushed the final shred of lingering attachment Lin Xian felt for the original owner's sect. He raised his head, meeting his master's cold gaze without fear, his face devoid of any apprehension or grievance after being scolded, only a chilling tranquility. This disciple dares not forget master's teachings. Lin Xian's voice was clear and firm, echoing throughout the small courtyard. However, this disciple asks himself, since entering the sect, I have diligently performed my duties, and for the sect and my fellow disciples, my conscience is clear. Yet, I have greatly neglected my own grand Tao. He paused, his gaze sweeping over his master's furious face and Lu Xian's incredulous expression, then continued. Junior disciple, he acted recklessly, bringing trouble upon himself. This disciple is newly recovered from serious injuries and is unable to help. What wrong have I done? Master does not hold him accountable for his rashness, but instead blames this disciple for not providing timely rescue. Such partiality, this disciple cannot understand, nor can I accept. You dare to contradict your master. The cool and aloof, immortal venerable's face contorted with fury, spiritual energy surging around her, clearly in true anger. Lin Xian, however, no longer looked at her. Instead, he slowly took out the jade token symbolizing his chief disciple status, presented it with both hands, and then bowed deeply. This disciple is lacking in talent and knowledge, my virtue unworthy of the position. I fear I can no longer fulfill the responsibilities of chief disciple and serve the sect. Today, I resign from the position of chief disciple and request to move from a main peak to a side peak for quiet cultivation. I hope Master will grant my request. As his words fell, a deathly silence filled the air. Lu Xian covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. The anger on the cool and aloof, immortal venerable's face froze, transforming into extreme astonishment and disbelief. Resign as chief disciple, move from the spiritual, energy-rich main peak to that barren side peak. This was simply destroying his own future. Was he mad? However, Lin Xian's eyes told them he was serious. In those eyes, there was no impulsiveness, no childish defiance, only a profound resolve and detachment that saw through everything. Without waiting for the cool and aloof immortal venerable's response, Lin Xian straightened up and turned to walk into the side hall. A moment later, he emerged with only a simple traveling bag. He didn't have many possessions to begin with. Aside from a few changes of clothes and necessary cultivation resources, he hadn't kept any of the small mementos that the original owner treasured, symbolizing sect camaraderie. Under the complex and unreadable gazes of his master and junior sister, Lin Xian walked with calm steps, never looking back, out of the chief disciple's residence where he had lived for many years, heading towards the sect's edge, towards the publicly known abandoned peak. The sunlight stretched his shadow long, his figure resolute and aloof. At this moment, he completely severed his ties with the past. The sky of the Azure Cloud sect, from this moment on, truly began to change. And the center of this change was moving towards a desolate place no one paid attention to, where perhaps his true destiny lay buried. The Azure Cloud sect's side peak, named Moon-Gazing Peak, was a truly desolate place. Spiritual energy was so sparse it was almost imperceptible, with only some drought-resistant weeds and low shrubs growing sparsely. The mountain wind howled past, carrying a desolate taste. At the peak, there were only a few dilapidated stone houses that looked as if they could collapse at any moment, originally abandoned miners' dwellings from many years ago, long since forgotten. Lin Xian set foot here and, far from feeling disappointed, took a deep breath. Although spiritual energy was scarce in the air, it also lacked the omnipresent noise and pressure of the main peak, offering a rare tranquility. A distant heart makes any place remote, he murmured to himself. The poetry from his previous life was particularly apt at this moment. For him, needing an absolutely quiet environment to sort himself out and replan his path to immortality, this was simply the perfect secluded sanctuary. He chose a relatively complete stone house, cleaned it briefly, and then settled in. His days became extremely regular. During the day, he no longer had to deal with any sect affairs, nor did he have to worry about being suddenly called upon for help. All his time was dedicated to three things: healing, cultivation, and exploration. His injuries gradually healed under quiet recuperation. He abandoned the original owner's methodical practice of the Azure Cloud Art and began to try combining some of his previous life's thought patterns with the unorthodox divine sense techniques from the Scripture Pavilion, re-examining and optimizing his cultivation method. He found that when his mind completely settled, his perception and control of spiritual energy became even more acute. Although spiritual energy was sparse here, the efficiency of absorption and refinement was subtly higher than when he was on the main peak. This made him even more convinced that inner peace and focus were far more important than external spiritual energy concentration. One day, at dusk, while exploring the back mountain of the side peak, Lin Xian inadvertently discovered a crevice in the mountain wall, covered by vines and rubble. The crevice was narrow, barely allowing one person to pass sideways, and there was a faint flow of air within. With a stir in his heart, Lin Xian carefully pushed aside the vines and squeezed inside sideways. It was very narrow at first, just enough for a person to pass. After walking several tens of steps, it suddenly opened up. Beyond the crevice was a small natural cave. The cave was dry and clean, with a small, long-dried spiritual spring eye in the center. On a stone platform beside the spring eye sat a skeleton clad in a tattered Taoist robe, having meditated until death who knew how many years ago. Beside the skeleton lay a faded jade slip. An ancient cultivator's cave dwelling? Lin Xian was slightly surprised, having not expected to find traces left by predecessors in this abandoned side peak. He respectfully bowed to the skeleton, and only then carefully picked up the jade slip. His divine sense penetrated it, and a massive stream of information instantly flooded into his mind. This jade slip was not some earth-shattering divine cultivation manual, but rather the cultivation insights and travelogue of an ancient cultivator who called himself Idle Cloud Wanderer. This wanderer's cultivation wasn't top tier, yet he lived a carefree life, traveling far and wide. His insights contained extremely subtle and unique perspectives on how to use divine sense to aid cultivation, how to maximize energy absorption in places with scarce spiritual energy, and some practical minor spells and formations. Especially among them, an auxiliary cultivation method named Heart-Refining Divine Sense Art, specifically for tempering divine sense, made Lin Xian feel as if he had found a treasure. This method perfectly aligned with the inspiration he had gained from the Scripture Pavilion and was even more systematic and complete. The great Tao is simple. Sincerity makes it effective. Though external things are good, they are not as good as a single thought from one's true heart. The opening words of the jade slip deeply touched Lin Xian. This senior, evidently, was also a kindred spirit who disliked restrictions and focused on cultivating the heart. What he left behind was exactly what Lin Xian needed most at this moment, a cultivation path that didn't rely on external objects, but focused on uncovering one's own potential. After obtaining the heart-refining divine sense art, Lin Xian's cultivation entered a new phase. He no longer rushed to raise his spiritual power realm, but instead spent most of his time tempering his divine sense. Following the method described, he concentrated his mind and calmed his qi, guiding his divine sense like fine threads, observing himself internally and perceiving the world externally. Gradually, he found his perception of the surrounding environment became clearer than ever before. The subtle flow patterns of the sparse spiritual energy in the air, the texture of the rocks beneath his feet, and even the faint vitality of weeds growing in the distance, all seemed to be reflected in his mind. His Tao heart, in this ultimate tranquility and introspection, became even more crystal clear and steadfast. All the injustices and grievances of the past, as if washed clean by pure water, could no longer stir ripples in his heart. In his eyes, there was only the immortal path ahead, distant yet incredibly clear. But even as Lin Xian diligently cultivated on the side peak, and his Tao heart gradually reached perfection, on the main peak, an unforeseen storm began to brew because of his complete departure. Habit is a terrible power. When the figure who always silently handled everything and could be relied upon at any time truly vanished, the vacuum left behind began to make some people genuinely feel discomfort and panic. The Azure Cloud Secret Realm, opening once every 10 years, was the most important trial ground within the Azure Cloud Sect's domain. Although there were many opportunities within it, dangers also coexisted. It had always been a crucial testing ground for outer sect disciples to advance to the inner sect and for inner sect disciples to temper themselves. In previous openings of the Secret Realm, Lin Xian, as the chief disciple, was inevitably the core of the team. He had to plan routes, allocate resources, and practice formations months in advance. Once inside the Secret Realm, he would charge at the front, cover the rear, protecting his junior brothers and sisters thoroughly. Everyone had grown accustomed to safely acquiring resources under his wing. This time, however, everything was different. On the open ground at the entrance of the Secret Realm, the atmosphere was subtle. Dozens of qualified inner and outer sect disciples gathered there, in groups of 3 to 5, whispering. Their gazes involuntarily darted towards 2 directions. One side was the group centered around junior brother Yichun. Yichun wore a splendid magical robe, full of vigor, surrounded by second junior sister Su Ru, third junior sister Lu Xian, and several disciples who usually got along well with them. Su Ru was carefully inspecting Yi Chen's equipment, while Lu Xian gently reminded him of precautions, clearly treating him like a star among the crowd. However, upon closer inspection, one could notice a subtle, almost imperceptible anxiety hidden between Su Ru's brows, and Lu Xian's gaze occasionally drifted towards the entrance, as if anticipating something. The other side had only one solitary figure, Lin Xian. He still wore his faded, ordinary green robe, standing alone at the edge of the crowd, away from the clamor. He didn't speak to anyone, just quietly watched the mist-shrouded entrance to the Secret Realm, his gaze profound, as if calculating something. The morning light fell upon his calm profile, outlining a sense of detachment and serenity that was out of place with his surroundings. "Senior brother, is he really alone?" a disciple whispered. "I heard he resigned as chief and moved to the side peak. It seems he's truly disheartened." What's with the pretense of being noble? The Secret Realm is full of dangers, without companions to look out for him. Let's see how long he lasts. Another disciple scoffed, mostly those who had previously envied his position as chief. Yichun also noticed Lin Xian. A hint of unnaturalness flickered across his face. Immediately, he put on a smile and proactively walked forward. "Senior brother, the Secret Realm is perilous. Why don't we still travel together as before? We can look out for each other." These words seemed generous, but in reality, they carried a subtle hint of superiority, as if it were an act of charity. Lin Xian slowly turned his head, his gaze calmly sweeping over Yichun and the complex expressions of Su Ru and Lu Xian behind him, then spoke indifferently. "No need. I'm used to going my own way." His voice wasn't loud, yet it clearly reached everyone's ears, carrying an undeniable resolve. Su Ru couldn't help but speak. "Senior brother, this isn't the time to be stubborn. The Secret Realm is no child's play." Lin Xian, however, had already withdrawn his gaze, no longer paying them any attention. Just then, the mist at the entrance of the Secret Realm churned violently, revealing a luminous flowing passage. The secret realm is open. Enter quickly. The guardian elder's voice rang out. Before his words had faded, Lin Xian's figure had already moved. He didn't hesitate in the slightest, nor did he look back at his former companions. Like an arrow shot from a bowstring, he was the first to transform into a green silhouette, disappearing into the passage. His astonishing speed and decisive action left everyone stunned. "Let's go too." Yi Chen's face showed a hint of embarrassment. He quickly called out to the crowd, who then flocked into the secret realm. Inside the secret realm, the scenery changed dramatically. Ancient trees towered to the sky. Miasma pervaded the air, which was filled with a primal and dangerous aura. After Lin Xian landed, his divine sense spread out like mercury flowing across the ground. The effects of the heart-refining divine sense art were now undeniable. Every rustle in the grass, the direction of spiritual energy flow within dozens of yards, and even venomous insects hidden beneath decaying leaves were clearly reflected in his mind. He completely disregarded the usual safe routes, and instead, based on the feedback from his divine sense, chose a small path where spiritual energy fluctuations were most subtle and also most difficult to traverse. His figure darted through the dense forest, his steps agile and uncanny, constantly evading hidden traps and lurking demonic beasts at the last possible second, moving with astonishing speed. His goal was clear: to head directly to the core region of the secret realm. The scattered resources in the outer areas were no longer worth his attention. Meanwhile, Yi Chen and his group had run into trouble. Accustomed to Lin Xian's meticulous arrangements and warnings, they chose a seemingly safe route based on past experience. However, without Lin Xian clearing hidden dangers or giving timely warnings, they soon triggered a concealed entrapment formation. Mist rose, illusions proliferated, and several disciples panicked, losing their footing. "Be careful! It's an illusion formation!" Yi Chen exclaimed, swinging his sword at a lunging phantom, only to strike empty air and stumble. Su Ru and Lu Xian hurriedly protected him, flusteredly fending off a continuous stream of attacks. Though there was no substantial harm, it greatly depleted their mental energy and spiritual power. If only Senior Brother were here, he would definitely have discovered this formation beforehand. Someone mumbled softly in the chaos. This sentence, like a needle, pricked through their superficial unity. Su Ru and Lu Xian's movements both stiffened, and complex expressions appeared on their faces. Indeed, in the past, such low-level traps would never have come close to them. Senior Brother would always walk at the very front, silently resolving all dangers. But now, they truly felt that without the protection of that steady figure, this secret realm was indeed fraught with peril at every step. After expending immense effort, the group finally stumbled out of the formation in a disheveled state, all pale-faced, and having significantly depleted their spiritual power. The previously relaxed atmosphere was utterly gone. At this moment, Lin Xian had long since passed through the perilous middle layer and was approaching the core of the secret realm. His robes hadn't even gathered much dust, and his gaze remained as calm as ever. The lone traveler was far ahead. Outside the secret realm, the elders and some high-level disciples, observing the internal situation through water mirror techniques, also noticed the starkly different performances of these two teams. When they saw Lin Xian's ghost-like, precise, and efficient traversal, several elders' eyes revealed astonishment. This child, his movement technique is so uncanny, and his foresight of danger is even more astonishing. The direction he's heading is the Bone Forest in the core zone. There's a demon general equivalent to the late Foundation establishment stage there. It seems this secret realm trial will have some unexpected twists and turns. Everyone's gaze involuntarily fixed on the solitary figure in azure. They vaguely sensed that this secret realm trial might no longer be Yi Chen's exclusive stage. Their long-ignored senior disciple brother was announcing his return with an unyielding stance. His power was no longer for protecting anyone, but solely for his own immortal path. The Bone Forest lived up to its name. Towering ancient trees had all withered, their branches twisted like gnarled claws. The ground was covered with the bleached bones of unknown demon beasts and adventurers. The air was thick with the scent of decay and death, and while spiritual energy was chaotic and sparse, a faint, heart-stopping pressure permeated it. This was the Azure Cloud's secret realm's recognized forbidden zone. Even late Foundation establishment cultivators dared not easily set foot here. Lin Xian's figure quietly appeared at the edge of the Bone Forest. He didn't immediately venture deeper, but instead fully circulated the heart-condensing spirit refining art, carefully extending his divine sense inward like the finest spiderweb to probe. The information relayed back to his divine sense made his heart subtly constrict. Within the forest, not only were several fierce aura skeleton demon soldiers, equivalent to mid to late Foundation establishment. Lurking, but deeper still, a vast, deathly silent aura comparable to peak Foundation establishment faintly appeared and disappeared, likely belonging to the demon general guarding this place. In addition, various natural traps and corrosive poisonous miasmas were ubiquitous, making it fraught with danger. Yet, amidst the myriad dangers, his divine sense keenly detected a trace of unusually pure and subtle energy fluctuation, originating from a collapsed sinkhole at the very center of the Bone Forest. That fluctuation shared the same origin as the anomaly he had sensed earlier in the core region, but it was much clearer. As expected, there's something fishy. Lin Xian's eyes gleamed. Risk and opportunity coexist. This was always an iron rule of the cultivation world. Since he had come, there was no reason to return empty-handed. He didn't choose to force his way through, but instead, based on the results of his divine sense probe, plotted an extremely cunning route that skirted the very edges of various dangers. His movement technique was pushed to its limit, like a ghost in the dark night, silently creeping forward, utilizing the shadows of the dry bones and the undulations of the terrain. Occasionally, wandering skeleton demon soldiers approached. He would either avoid them beforehand or instantly shatter their core soul fire, with a fingertip wind condensed to its extreme, never wasting an ounce of strength or causing any significant disturbance. This extreme precision in controlling timing, angle, and power caused a collective gasp of cold air to ripple before the water mirror observing the secret realm from outside. This young man, his control over spiritual energy has reached such a meticulous level. That movement technique is definitely not from our Azure Cloud sect. It's elusive and unpredictable, yet incredibly efficient. Watching him deal with demon beasts, he's terrifyingly calm, as if he's already calculated everything. Amidst the elders' exclamations of awe, the voices that had initially questioned Lin Xian for ruining his future completely vanished. They were replaced by a profound shock and a desire to investigate. They realized that this chief disciple, whom they had overlooked, might have embarked on an entirely different yet infinitely promising path. Meanwhile, in another scene on the water mirror, Yi Chun and his group appeared rather disheveled. They had encountered several waves of demon beast attacks in the outer regions. Although they eventually repelled them with combined efforts, everyone was injured, and their spiritual power was greatly depleted, forcing them to stop and recuperate. Su Ru and Lu Xian were busy treating a minor scratch on Yi Chun, their faces etched with heartache and worry, a stark contrast to Lin Xian's unhurried ease. This striking contrast was clearly presented before all observers via the water mirror, silent yet deafening. Lin Xian had no time for distractions. After some twists and turns, he finally arrived safely at the edge of the sinkhole. The sinkhole was unfathomably deep, and the pure energy fluctuation emanated from below. Without hesitation, he leaped down. Below the sinkhole was a hidden world of its own, a small underground grotto. In the center of the grotto, there was a small, milky white spring. The spring contained not water, but spirit liquid formed from incredibly dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Above the spring, a pigeon egg-sized, crystal-clear pearl floated, slowly rotating and emitting a soft glow along with the pure energy fluctuation. 10,000-year stone marrow? No, this is even purer earth core spirit paste. And this pearl, it seems to be some kind of natural wonder that condenses and purifies spiritual energy. Lin Xian's eyes blazed with joyful surprise. This earth core spirit paste was a top-tier treasure for tempering the body and solidifying the foundation. For him, currently transitioning from a chi refinement to the foundation establishment stage, its value was immeasurable. And that wondrous pearl was an auxiliary cultivation supreme treasure, something one could only hope to encounter. Without any hesitation, Lin Xian took out a jade bottle and carefully collected most of the earth core spirit paste, leaving only a thin layer to prevent the spring from drying up. As for the wondrous pearl, the moment he reached out to touch it, it transformed into a streak of light, merged into his glabella, and floated directly in his sea of consciousness, slowly rotating and continuously purifying the spiritual energy he absorbed. A tremendous harvest. However, the instant he collected the treasures, the grotto trembled violently. The terrifying peak foundation establishment aura from its depths suddenly awoke, letting out an enraged spiritual roar. Clearly, Lin Xian had taken what it guarded. This is no place to linger. Lin Xian showed no trace of greed. His figure was like lightning, rapidly returning along the original path. He no longer concealed his tracks, pushing his speed to the limit, as the terrifying entity behind him was completely enraged, and the entire bone forest began to shake. When he shot out of the bone forest like an arrow from a bowstring, fleeing far towards the secret realm exit without looking back, silence had fallen before the water mirror outside the secret realm. Everyone understood that Lin Xian had not only successfully entered the Forbidden Zone, but had also snatched away a fortuitous opportunity that even they coveted, right under the nose of that terrifying demon general. This courage, strength, and decisive action completely overturned their perception of their former chief senior disciple brother. The serene, immortal, venerable gazed at the resolute, unhesitating figure retreating into the distance on the water mirror. Her fingers in her sleeves subtly curled, and for the first time, an extremely complex emotion appeared in her eyes. Within it were shock, bewilderment, and a trace of regret that even she was unwilling to admit. Meanwhile, Yi Chun and the others were still battling demon beasts for a few ordinary spiritual herbs in the secret realm. They were still unaware of the astonishing feat their senior disciple brother, whom they considered down and out, had accomplished, leaving them far behind. The gap was no longer negligible. Lin Xian did not stay in the secret realm until the very last moment. After acquiring the earth core spirit paste and the mysterious wondrous pearl, he unhesitatingly made a beeline for the secret realm exit, becoming one of the first disciples to leave the secret realm. This action once again astonished the observing elders. Ordinary disciples would be eager to stay in the secret realm for another moment to find more resources, yet he was so decisive, as if nothing else in the secret realm could pique his interest. After leaving the secret realm, Lin Xian didn't even return to the main peak for handover. He went directly back to his dilapidated stone house on Moon-Gazing Peak. The stone door slammed shut, cutting off all external disturbances. The first thing he needed to deal with was the wondrous pearl that had voluntarily settled in his sea of consciousness. This pearl slowly rotated in his sea of consciousness, emitting a soft halo. Not only did it bring unprecedented tranquility to his mind, but it also acted like a natural spiritual energy filter. The spiritual energy absorbed from outside became exceptionally pure and docile after passing through it, making it extremely easy to refine. This item, it can actually purify spiritual energy and refine divine sense. It truly is a supreme treasure for auxiliary cultivation. Lin Xian rejoiced in his heart. With the aid of this wondrous pearl, his cultivation speed would increase by at least 30%, and his foundation would be built incredibly solid. Next, he took out the jade bottle containing the earth core spirit paste. Opening the stopper, a refreshing and unique fragrance immediately permeated the air. Just a single whiff made him feel completely comfortable, with his spiritual energy becoming active. He carefully extracted a single drop of the milky white, jade marrow-like spirit paste and dripped it into his mouth. The spirit paste, upon entering his stomach, instantly transformed into a gentle, yet immensely vast warm current, surging towards his limbs and bones. This energy didn't violently impact his meridians, but rather, like the finest spring rain, nourished every inch of his flesh and blood, every meridian, and even penetrated deep into his bone marrow. Some subtle hidden injuries previously left by severe wounds and rapid advancement quietly healed under the nourishment of this energy. His physical strength visibly improved, and his meridians became tougher and wider. Lin Xian dared not slack off. He immediately circulated his cultivation art, guiding this energy through a grand cycle, while simultaneously drawing on the power of the wondrous pearl to frantically absorb the sparse, spiritual energy of moon-gazing peak. His aura was continuously rising at a steady and astonishing pace. Just as Lin Xian was cultivating in seclusion on the side peak, fully digesting his immense gains, quite a stir was caused on the main peak due to the outcome of the secret realm trip. Yi Chun and his group finally emerged disheveled before the secret realm closed. Although they had gathered some spiritual herbs and materials, everyone was injured and looked exhausted, a stark contrast to the composure they had shown in previous years when following Lin Xian. What made it even worse for them was that almost all the disciples were discussing Lin Xian's feat of single-handedly entering the bone forest, seizing a great treasure, and then gracefully departing. Did you hear? Senior Brother Lin went into the bone forest all by himself. More than that, apparently, he even alarmed the demon general inside, and Senior Brother Lin still managed to come out completely unharmed. My heavens, the bone forest is a forbidden zone. Just how strong is Senior Brother Lin now? We really misjudged him before. Senior Disciple Brother, he hid his true abilities too well. These discussions pierced Yi Chun, Su Ru, and Lu Xian's hearts like needles. Yi Chen's face was so gloomy it looked like water could drip from it. The envy and flattery that once surrounded him now seemed to have shifted to the Senior Disciple Brother he had once considered to be down and out. Su Ru bit her lip, looking at Yi Chen's gloomy face, then recalling Lin Xian's calm and powerful figure in the water mirror. Her heart was filled with mixed emotions, and for the first time, she felt strong doubts about her past words and actions. Lu Xian was even more dazed. Her senior brother had become so powerful and unfamiliar, instilling in her an inexplicable fear and a sense of loss. These emotions first erupted in second junior sister Su Ru. She remembered how Lu Xian had been refused medicinal pills earlier, and how Yi Chun had expended a great deal during his trip to the secret realm, urgently needing pills to consolidate his cultivation. Meanwhile, Lin Xian surely possessed better resources. A complex psychological urge drove her. Perhaps she should try one more time? Maybe Senior Brother was just angry before, and now seeing him doing well, he might remember their old camaraderie? Carrying a sliver of hope and a stroke of luck that she herself hadn't noticed, she arrived at Wanyue Peak once more. However, the sight before her made her freeze. The peak was still desolate, and the stone door of the stone house was tightly shut. But unlike last time, an invisible barrier seemed to surround the stone house, with spiritual energy faintly flowing, clearly indicating a simple restriction had been set up to prevent disturbances. What shocked her even more was that even through the restriction, she could faintly perceive waves of spiritual energy, each stronger than the last, emanating from within the stone house. The aura was rich and majestic, clearly a sign of cultivation rapidly breaking through. He was actually breaking through. on a side peak with such sparse spiritual energy. Suru stood before the tightly shut stone door, opening her mouth, but found she couldn't utter a sound. Last time she came, she could still voice a few righteous complaints, but this time, facing the silent restriction and the heart-pounding breakthrough aura behind the door, all words seemed pale and powerless. She could almost imagine the person behind the door, single-mindedly immersed in cultivation, indifferent to everything outside, including her arrival. An unprecedented mix of embarrassment, shame, and regret welled up in her heart. She was like an outsider. No, not even an outsider, but merely an unwelcome disturbance. She stood before the stone door for a long time. Finally, without saying anything, she silently turned and left. Her departing figure appeared particularly lonely and disheveled. This silent confrontation before the elixir room was more impactful than any vehement words. It clearly conveyed a message. Lin Xian's world had completely shut its doors to them. His power, his breakthrough, had absolutely nothing more to do with them. Meanwhile, inside the stone house, Lin Xian was completely unaware and uncaring of what was happening outside the door. All his focus was immersed in the wonderful feeling of constant transformation and ascent towards a higher realm. Undercurrents were already stirring on the main peak. Yet, the eye of a storm was on the side peak, enjoying a solitary yet powerful tranquility. The gap was widening at a desperate speed. Wangyue Peak, inside the stone house. Lin Xian sat cross-legged, spiritual energy swirling around him like a tangible mist. The potent medicinal power of the Earth Core Spirit Ointment had been completely refined by him, not only tempering his physical body to be as pure and flawless as glazed jade, but also pushing his cultivation to the peak of the great perfection stage of qi refinement, just one step away from entering the foundation establishment stage. However, this final step was not easy. From qi refinement to foundation establishment was the first critical watershed on the path of immortal cultivation. It required condensing the Tao Foundation and opening the Dantian Purple Mansion, a process fraught with extreme danger. What made Lin Xian sense even more was that, due to his exceptionally solid foundation and crystal-clear Tao heart, his breakthrough would likely not attract an ordinary foundation establishment celestial phenomenon. He took a deep breath, no longer suppressing the surging spiritual energy within his body, and fully activated his cultivation technique, charging towards that invisible barrier. As if a thunderclap exploded within him, a tearing pain erupted in his dantian, but it was immediately followed by a feeling of sudden clarity and exhilaration. The originally gaseous spiritual energy began to compress and condense wildly, transforming into liquid true essence, and a broader purple mansion space, capable of holding more energy, was slowly being opened. Just at the moment of his successful foundation establishment, heaven and earth changed color. Above Wangyue Peak, the originally clear sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds, like surging angry waves, gathered from all directions, layering densely and suffocatingly. Within the dark clouds, silver serpents danced wildly, thunder rumbled, and a soul-shaking heavenly might enveloped the entire Qingyun sect. What's happening? Is it the heavenly tribulation? Who is undergoing tribulation? The direction? It's a side peak. Wangyue Peak. The entire Qingyun sect was alarmed by this sudden, terrifying, celestial phenomenon. Countless disciples rushed out of their dwellings, staring up at the sky in fright. The elders appeared one after another, their faces filled with shock. He's triggering the heavenly tribulation at the foundation establishment stage? How is this possible? A white-haired elder's beard trembled. Ancient texts record that only peerless prodigies with heaven-defying foundations, feared by the Tao of Heaven, could possibly attract the baptism of a thunder tribulation upon foundation establishment. Our Qingyun sect has stood for 1,000 years, and there has never been such a precedent. On the main peak, the clear and cold immortal venerable suddenly rose from her meditation cushion, instantly appearing outside the hall. Gazing towards Wangyue Peak, her usually placid face was now etched with unconcealable shock and disbelief. 3-9 Thunder Tribulation. It's actually a 3-9 Thunder Tribulation, she whispered, her voice lost. Ordinary Golden Core cultivators only face tribulations of the 3-9 scale, yet Lin Xian had attracted a heavenly punishment of the same magnitude at the Foundation establishment stage. What did this mean? It meant that his potential, his Tao Foundation, was so profound that it threatened the very rules of heaven and earth. Su Ru, Lu Xian, and Yi Chun, who had just emerged from seclusion and was about to show off his gains from the secret realm to his master, were all terrified, their faces drained of color by the destructive scene. It's senior brother. Lu Xian's voice trembled as she gazed at the dilapidated stone house below the center of the thunderclouds, like a small boat in a storm. Her eyes were filled with fear and an indescribable mix of emotions. The senior brother they had once considered fallen and could casually criticize had actually attracted a thunder tribulation only legendary geniuses could trigger. Yi Chen's face was even paler, his fists clenched, his fingernails digging deep into his palms. He had originally thought that his breakthrough in the secret realm had narrowed the gap between him and his senior brother. But this scene before him was like a resounding slap, shattering all his pride and complacency. This was not a gap. It was an unbridgeable chasm. The first heavenly lightning bolt, like a ferocious silver dragon, tore through the firmament, carrying an aura of destruction, and savagely struck down towards the peak of Wangyue Peak. The stone house instantly turned to dust in the lightning's glow. Amidst the rising smoke and dust, a tall and straight figure emerged, none other than Lin Xian. He neither dodged nor avoided. Looking up at the sky, his eyes devoid of fear, filled only with boiling fighting spirit and unwavering determination. Spiritual energy surged wildly around him. The newly condensed liquid true essence erupted without reservation, transforming into a solid blue light pillar, boldly meeting the heavenly lightning. He's actually going to directly withstand the heavenly lightning. Everyone who witnessed this scene felt their hearts leap to their throats. The lightning and the blue light collided fiercely, erupting in blinding brilliance and a deafening roar. Lin Xian's figure was swallowed by the lightning. However, when the lightning dissipated, he still stood, although his clothes were tattered and a trace of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. His posture remained as straight as a pine, and his gaze grew even sharper. Again, he roared, actively circulating his cultivation technique, absorbing the residual thunder force in the air to temper his body. Boom! 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 One after another, even thicker and more terrifying heavenly lightning bolts struck down successively. The entire Wangyue Peak trembled, rocks fractured, and vegetation turned to ash. Lin Xian's figure rose and fell in the sea of lightning, repeatedly struck until his skin split and bled, yet he stubbornly stood up again and again. He circulated the condensing heart refining spirit art to its extreme, his divine sense highly focused, guiding the thunder force to temper his physical body, purify his true essence, and consolidate his Tao Foundation. This thunder tribulation was a calamity, but even more, it was an opportunity. When the final and most terrifying ninth heavenly lightning bolt struck, Lin Xian let out a long cry. The newly opened purple mansion within him shone brightly. All his true essence gathered at his fist, and he punched towards the sky. Within his fist intent was his unyielding Tao heart and his boundless yearning for the immortal path. Break! The fist aura and the lightning dragon collided again. This time, the lightning dragon was actually shattered by that incredibly concentrated fist intent. It transformed into countless tiny electrical serpents, which were greedily absorbed by Lin Xian's body. The thunderclouds gradually dispersed, and light returned to the sky. A wisp of pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth descended like a pillar of light, enveloping Lin Xian, rapidly healing his injuries and nourishing his Tao foundation. This was the gift from heaven and earth after successfully passing the heavenly tribulation. Bathed in the spiritual light, Lin Xian, though disheveled, had an aura that was more than 10 times stronger than before. His foundation establishment cultivation was completely stabilized, and he had directly reached the peak of the early foundation establishment stage. His physical body, having undergone the Thunder Tribulation's baptism, was as strong as a body cultivator of the same realm, and his true essence was incredibly pure and condensed. The entire sect was dead silent. Everyone stared blankly at the figure slowly rising from the ruins, radiating a powerful aura, as if looking up at a deity. The clear and cold immortal venerable remained silent for a long time. Finally, it transformed into an extremely complex sigh. She knew that she might have forever lost a disciple capable of bringing immense glory to the sect. No, it wasn't losing him. It was that who personally pushed him away. Su Ru and Lu Xian were already in tears, but their tears no longer held grievance or complaint, only endless regret and bewilderment. Yichen stood rooted to the spot, distraught, a clear crack now visible upon his Tao heart. On this day, Lin Xian's heaven-shaking feat of drawing down the Thunder Tribulation upon his foundation establishment completely shocked the entire Qinyan sect. His name was no longer merely associated with former chief senior disciple brother, but was etched into everyone's hearts as a true peerless genius. Mount Wangwei, this once desolate place, was destined to become a new legendary starting point for the Qinyan sect because of his actions today. As the Thunder Tribulation dissipated, the spiritual light bestowed by heaven and earth slowly merged into Lin Xian's body, repairing the injuries to his physical form and solidifying his newly established Tao foundation. The summit of Mount Wangwei was a mess. Charred earth and shattered stones lay everywhere. Yet at its center, that towering figure exuded a formidable aura that none dared to meet directly. The foundation establishment stage, and achieved in such an unprecedented and shocking manner by drawing down the 3-9 Thunder Tribulation. The news spread like wildfire, instantly reaching every corner of the Qinyan sect. The previous discussions about Lin Xian ruining his future and being relegated to a side peak now seemed utterly ridiculous. In their place was profound shock, reverence, and an indescribable mix of complex emotions. On the main peak, within immortal venerable Qing Lung's quiet cultivation hall, the atmosphere was so thick it could almost drip. Immortal venerable Qing Lung stood with her back to the hall entrance, gazing out the window towards Mount Wangwei, where faint ripples of heaven and earth spiritual energy still lingered. She remained silent for a long time. Her always upright back now seemed somewhat forlorn. Su Ru and Lu Xian knelt prostrate on the ground, not even daring to draw a deep breath. Yichen stood to the side, pale-faced, his eyes unfocused. He had clearly not yet recovered his senses from the apocalyptic sight of the Thunder Tribulation, and the crack on his Tao heart seemed to be continuously widening. Foundation Establishment Thunder Tribulation. The 3-9 count. Immortal venerable Qing Lung's voice, carrying a barely perceptible hoarseness, broke the suffocating silence. Ancient texts record that only those with a heaven-defying foundation and clear Tao heart could draw it down. It was I, your master, who misjudged. She spoke the last 3 words very softly, yet they struck Su Ru and Lu Xian's hearts like a heavy hammer. How proud their master was to actually admit with her own mouth that she had been mistaken. This terrified and filled them with more regret than any reprimand. Su Ru suddenly lifted her head, tears streaming down her face. Master, it's this disciple's fault. It was this disciple who was ignorant and foolish in the past, repeatedly contradicting senior disciple brother, which made senior disciple brother's heart grow cold. Only now did she truly realize what a peerlessly talented and brilliant fellow disciple they had lost. Lu Xian also sobbed uncontrollably. Senior disciple brother. He used to be so good to us, it was us. We were blind. Immortal Venerable Qing Lung slowly turned around, her gaze sweeping over the two sobbing disciples, then glancing at the distraught Yichun. A trace of weariness and complexity flickered in her eyes. How could she not bear responsibility? Her favoritism and indulgence were the root of it all. Enough, she waved her hand, her voice laced with deep weariness. Now that Lin Xian has achieved foundation establishment, according to sect rules, he shall be promoted to intersect elder and may establish his own peak. He will not return to the main peak. These words completely shattered the last glimmer of hope in Su Ru's heart. Establishing his own peak meant that senior disciple brother would thoroughly sever ties with them. A strong impulse to make amends drove Su Ru. She wiped away her tears, her tone firm and resolute. Master, this disciple wants to go to Mount Wangwei to apologize to senior disciple brother. Whether he forgives or not, this disciple must go. Immortal Venerable Qing Lung looked at her, not stopping her, merely saying lightly, "Go. But remember, do not force it." On Mount Wangwei, the ruins had been simply cleared by Lin Xian. He was sitting cross-legged on a relatively flat boulder, solidifying his foundation establishment cultivation. Within his body, liquid true essence surged like a rushing river. His divine sense range had expanded by more than tenfold, and his perception of heaven and earth spiritual energy had also become clearer. The wondrous pearl in his sea of consciousness still slowly rotated, assisting him in purifying his true essence. Suddenly, his brows slightly twitched, and he opened his eyes. Two figures were struggling upwards along the rugged mountain path. It was Su Ru and Lu Xian. The two of them were also holding several exquisite jade boxes, clearly carrying gifts. Lin Xian's gaze was calm, without joy or sorrow. His divine sense had already detected them the moment they entered the range of Mount Wangwei. Su Ru and Lu Xian came closer, looking at Lin Xian, who sat cross-legged on the boulder, his aura as deep as the sea. For a moment, they could hardly recognize him. The man before them had the same appearance, but his demeanor was completely different, as if he had been reborn. Especially his eyes, so profound they seemed to pierce through people's hearts, making them involuntarily feel immense pressure. Say, senior disciple brother Lin. Su Ru bit her lip, changing her form of address, and offered the jade boxes in her hand, her voice filled with earnestness and a hint of imperceptible trembling. Congratulations, senior disciple brother, on successfully achieving foundation establishment, drawing down the heavenly tribulation, and shaking the entire sect. In the past, this junior sister was young and ignorant and often offensive. We hope senior disciple brother will be magnanimous and not hold it against us. These are some pills for healing and solidifying cultivation, a small token of our sincerity. Lu Xian also hurriedly offered her gifts, lowering her head, not daring to look into Lin Xian's eyes. Lin Xian did not look at the jade boxes. His gaze calmly swept over the two of them, his tone calm, yet distant. I appreciate the sentiment. Take the pills back. I have no use for them. His refusal was so direct that Su Ru and Lu Xian's faces instantly turned deathly pale. Su Ru said anxiously, "Senior disciple brother Lin, we truly know we were wrong. In the past, it was our fault. We were utterly foolish. Please, for the sake of our past fellowship as fellow disciples." Fellowship, Lin Xian gently interrupted her, a faint curve playing on his lips. There was no mockery in it, only the indifference of one who had seen through everything. From the day I moved out of the main peak, only the fellowship of fellow disciples as dictated by sect rules remained between us. All that came before is dead as yesterday. There's no need to mention it again. His words were like ice-cold spring water, extinguishing the last hope in Su Ru's heart. She understood. Senior disciple brother wasn't acting out of spite. He had truly severed the past and let it go. Their apologies, their regrets, to him, were nothing more than irrelevant noise. Senior disciple Brother Lin. Lu Xian choked back sobs, wanting to say more. Lin Xian, however, had already closed his eyes again, his voice calm and unwavering. If there is nothing else, please leave. Do not disturb my cultivation. The dismissal order had been given. Su Ru and Lu Xian stood dumbfounded in place, the jade boxes in their hands becoming incredibly heavy. Looking at the profile of Lin Xian, who had completely entered a state of self-oblivion, they knew that any more words would be futile. Finally, the two, with hearts full of bitterness and empty hands, like defeated roosters, dejectedly walked down Mount Wangyue. This formal apology, far from bridging any distance, instead made them realize with painful clarity that senior disciple brother, who had once selflessly cared for them, was gone forever. What they had personally lost could never be found again. As for Lin Xian on the giant boulder, his mind had long since sunk into the profound realm of cultivation. External disturbances, to him, were merely transient clouds. His goal always lay in the higher skies ahead. The news of Lin Xian achieving foundation establishment and drawing down the thunder tribulation on Mount Wangyue did not merely remain confined to the Qingyan sect. Such a heaven-defying event, like a giant stone thrown into a calm lake, sent ripples rapidly spreading throughout the entire cultivation world, causing shock and speculation among the major sects and powers in the surrounding area. Even some truly mighty figures, hidden from the world and perceiving heaven and earth, also cast their gazes towards this small corner that was the Qingyan sect. About half a month after Lin Xian's breakthrough, just as he had solidified his cultivation at the peak of the early foundation establishment stage and began attempting to refine some simple magic treasures suitable for that stage, an immeasurable, terrifying pressure, far exceeding that of the golden core or even nascent soul stages, enveloped the entire Qingyan sect without any warning. Above the sky, clouds churned. A brilliant golden light broke through the clouds, descending like a heavenly ladder. Within the golden light, a blurry yet majestic figure slowly descended, surrounded by Tao rhythm, with laws faintly appearing, inspiring awe and an irresistible urge to prostrate in worship. Which senior has graced my Qingyun sect with their presence? Immortal Venerable Qing Lung appeared immediately, her voice carrying an unprecedented solemnity and respect, followed by a group of elders, their faces filled with shock. This pressure made even a cultivator at her late golden core stage feel like an ant facing a mountain. The figure in the golden light did not fully reveal its true form. Only a calm voice, yet imbued with supreme majesty, resonated throughout the entire sect. This venerable one is an emissary from the 9 heavens, immortal realm. Traveling through this realm, I sense that someone here recently drew down a foundation establishment, thunder tribulation, with an unsurpassed Tao foundation, and specifically came to observe. 9 heavens, immortal realm. Emissary. Like thunder, these words exploded in the minds of all who heard them. The 9 heavens, immortal realm. That was the longed-for yet unreachable realm of ascension for cultivators of this world. The emissary of reception, moreover, was a legendary figure said to escort geniuses directly from the lower realms into the upper realm. Everyone's gaze, in unison, turned sharply towards the still desolate moon-gazing peak. Clearstream, Immortal Venerable's heart pounded. He quickly bowed and said, reporting to the High Emissary, the one who drew the lightning tribulation is my sect's disciple, Lin Xian. He is currently meditating on Moon-Gazing Peak, a side peak. Oh, the emissary in the golden light seemed to show a hint of interest. His gaze appeared to pierce through the void, landing directly on the young man in green on the summit of Moon-Gazing Peak, who is currently polishing an embryonic magical artifact. At this moment, Lin Xian also felt an irresistible probing power. He stopped what he was doing, raised his head, and calmly looked at the golden light in the sky, neither humble nor arrogant. The emissary let out a soft exclamation, his tone carrying obvious surprise. The depth of his foundation and the clarity of his Tao heart indeed far exceed the limits of this realm. What's even rarer is that at such a young age, he has already seen through illusion and is unmoved by external things. With such a mindset, his future achievements will be immeasurable. The emissary's evaluation, like a final judgment, completely solidified Lin Xian's status as a peerless genius. To receive such praise, even from an upper realm emissary, what an honor was that. The entire Azure Cloud sect was silent, not a sound. All disciples and elders, including Clearstream Immortal Venerable, held their breath. The next moment, the emissary's words made everyone's heart stop. Lin Xian, are you willing to accompany me to the Nine Heavens Immortal Domain? With the thin spiritual energy and incomplete rules of this realm, it truly buries your talent. Enter my immortal domain, and you can obtain true laws, enjoy immortal chi, and the grand Tao will be within reach. A direct invitation, skipping the long cultivation process of this realm and directly ascending to the upper realm. What an heaven-defying opportunity was this? Throughout history, how many astonishingly talented individuals cultivated for thousands of years, enduring countless life or death struggles, yet might not even touch the threshold of ascension. And Lin Xian, at the foundation establishment stage, actually received such an opportunity. Countless gazes instantly became incredibly fervent, filled with extreme envy, jealousy, and profound shock. Yi Chun, mixed in the crowd, trembled upon hearing these words, his face pale as paper. The cracks on his Tao heart instantly widened, almost collapsing on the spot. His lifelong pursuit for others was merely a starting point? Su Ru and Lu Xian stood frozen, their minds blank. Ascend to the upper realm? That was a distant legend they didn't even dare to dream of. And their eldest senior brother, whom they had once disdained and wronged, had already obtained such qualifications. The immense sense of disparity almost suffocated them. However, facing this temptation that could drive any cultivator mad, Lin Xian, on moon-gazing peak, after the initial shock, his eyes quickly regained clarity. He did not answer immediately, but after a moment of contemplation, he cupped his hands, his voice clearly spreading in all directions. Many thanks for the high emissary's favor. However, this disciple's cultivation is shallow, and I still have unfulfilled wishes and unresolved karma in this realm. Moreover, the path of cultivation emphasizes steady progress. This disciple wishes to rely on my own strength to ascend step by step. If my cultivation is sufficient in the future, I will naturally personally go to the immortal domain to pay my respects to the high emissary. He refused. He actually refused. The entire scene erupted in an uproar. Everyone thought Lin Xian would agree without hesitation, but he chose to refuse. The reason was so unappreciative. Even the emissary in the golden light was silent for a moment, seemingly somewhat surprised. But immediately, a true hint of appreciation entered his calm voice. He does not covet shortcuts, nor does he rely on external things. His Tao heart is firm, and he has his own principles. Good, very good. Since that is the case, I will not force you. A golden light flew out from the emissary's hand, transforming into a token, neither gold nor jade, inscribed with profound runes. It floated before Lin Xian. This is an immortal domain recommendation token. Hold this token, and when your cultivation reaches the peak of nascent soul transformation, you can activate it yourself to open a passage to the Nine Heavens Immortal Domain. I hope you cultivate diligently and do not waste this talent and mindset. With that, the golden light receded, and the vast pressure retreated like a tide. The sky returned to its original state, as if nothing had ever happened. Only the immortal domain recommendation token, suspended before Lin Xian, emitting a faint glow, silently narrated the shocking truth of the preceding scene. The entire Azure Cloud sect was still immersed in a deathly silence. What had happened today was too incredible. Foundation establishment, lightning tribulation, an upper realm emissary, a direct invitation, and Lin Xian's earth-shattering refusal. Everyone's gaze once again converged on the young man on moon-gazing peak, who put away the token, his expression still calm, as if he had just done something insignificant. At this moment, no one dared to show him the slightest contempt. They understood that Lin Xian's future was no longer in the Azure Cloud sect, nor even in this realm. His stage was the vast and boundless Nine Heavens, immortal domain. Clearstream, immortal venerable looked at Lin Xian. Her lips moved, but in the end, she couldn't say anything. She knew that the Azure Cloud sect, this small temple, could no longer hold this true dragon destined to soar through the Nine Heavens. And they were fast losing even the qualification to look up at his back. An unprecedented, bone-deep regret, like a poisonous vine, tightly entwined around her and several disciples' hearts. More than a month had passed since the Upper Realm emissary's departure, but the Azure Cloud sect had not returned to its former tranquility. Lin Xian's existence was like a dazzling sun, eclipsing all starlight. Disciples no longer discussed what new spell senior brother Yichun had mastered, but rather how elder Lin, though Lin Xian had not officially accepted, the sect had tacitly recognized his elder status, had rejected the immortal emissary that day, and how captivating his demeanor was. This invisible comparison caused the atmosphere on the main peak to become increasingly oppressive. Yichun completely secluded himself. With his Dao heart damaged, his cultivation even showed subtle signs of regression. Su Ru and Lu Xian also became taciturn, often staring blankly towards moon-gazing peak, their eyes filled with intertwined regret. On moon-gazing peak, however, Lin Xian's life was extremely simple. With the immortal domain recommendation token and the assistance of the wondrous pearl in his sea of consciousness, his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. His foundation establishment realm was long since stable, and he was steadily progressing towards the middle foundation establishment stage. He spent most of his time meditating and refining qi, occasionally practicing spells, or studying the miscellaneous arts such as formations and alchemy recorded in the Jade Slip, laying a more comprehensive foundation for his future immortal path. He turned a deaf ear to the outside discussions and the undercurrents on the main peak. The immortal domain recommendation token was an opportunity, but also a bansa spurring him on, making him even more unwilling to show any slack. However, the tree desires tranquility, but the wind does not cease. This day, rolling demonic clouds suddenly appeared at the edge of the sky, obscuring the sun. A violent, sinister, and powerful aura approached from afar, quickly enveloping the entire Azure Cloud sect. Enemy attack. Its old ancestor Black Fiend. Quickly activate the sect protection array. The alarm bells rang continuously, and the sect fell into a panic. Old ancestor Black Fiend was a nascent soul-stage demonic cultivator who resided in Black Wind Valley several thousand miles away. He was brutal by nature and had a long-standing grudge with the Azure Cloud sect. However, in the past, he had been wary of the Azure Cloud sect protection array and Clearstream immortal venerable strength, so he had never truly torn off all pretenses. That he dared to directly attack today clearly meant he had something to rely on. Clearstream immortal venerable's expression was grave. She led the elders into the sky and activated the sect protection array. A massive azure light shield enveloped the main peak. He, Clearstream Jr., if you know what's good for you, obediently hand over the 1,000-year snow soul pearl. Otherwise, this old man will raise your Azure Cloud sect to the ground today. From within the demonic clouds emerged a gaunt, hideous old man in a black robe. It was old ancestor Black Fiend. Demonic energy surged around him, his aura even stronger than rumored, having actually reached the mid-nascent soul stage. Clearstream, immortal venerable's heart sank. The opponent's cultivation had advanced. The sect protection array might not hold for long. And that 1,000-year snow soul pearl was a sect treasure, related to the inheritance of a powerful sect-guarding divine ability, and absolutely could not be lost. Old Ancestor Black Fiend, stop your rampant behavior. The Snow Soul Pearl is our sect's inheritance. How can we give it to you? Obstinate and unrepentant. Then don't blame this old man for being ruthless. Old Ancestor Black Fiend let out a sinister laugh, manifesting a dark demonic banner. Thousands of resentful souls howled forth, fiercely assaulting the azure light shield. The light shield vibrated violently, its light dimming at a visible speed. The sect disciples' faces were drained of color, fear pervasive. Su Ru and Lu Xian held their magical artifacts, protecting the pale-faced Yi Chun, staring at the apocalyptic scene in the sky, their hearts filled with despair. Even Master and the elders were struggling to resist. Was the Azure Cloud sect doomed today? Just then someone with a choked voice cried out, if only Elder Lin were here." This sentence, like a spark, ignited everyone's last hope. All eyes, in unison, turned towards the silent, moon-gazing peak. Clearstream, Immortal Venerable's heart also stirred, but then a hint of bitterness flashed. Would he make a move? The sect had treated him as it did in the past. What reason did he have to save them? Moreover, the opponent was a mid-nascent soul old devil. Although Lin Xian was extraordinarily talented, he was only at the Foundation establishment stage, after all. However, just as the sect protection array was about to shatter, a calm voice, clearly reaching everyone's ears, overshadowed the howling demonic energy and the groaning of the array. Disturbing one's peaceful cultivation deserves death. Before the voice faded, an azure rainbow shot up from the summit of moon-gazing peak. Its speed was extreme, instantly traversing the void and arriving at the center of the battlefield. The azure light dissipated, revealing Lin Xian's figure. He was still in his green robes, his face calm, forming a stark contrast with the demonic energy-shrouded old ancestor Black Fiend opposite him. Where did this Foundation Establishment Junior come from, courting death? Old ancestor Black Fiend was startled at first, then smirked, casually waving his hand. A condensed demonic claw swiped towards Lin Xian. In his view, crushing a Foundation Establishment stage ant required no effort at all. However, facing this attack capable of instantly killing any Foundation Establishment cultivator, Lin Xian merely slowly raised his right hand. There was no spiritual light shining from his fingertips, yet they seemed to contain some profound cosmic truth. Extinguish. A single, soft word was uttered. The fierce demonic claw, still several tens of feet away from Lin Xian, vanished without a trace, as if ice and snow had met the sun, as if it had never existed. What? Black Fiend Patriarch's pupils suddenly contracted, an expression of shock appearing on his face for the first time. Everyone below who witnessed this scene was also stunned. A Foundation Establishment cultivator effortlessly neutralized an attack from a nascent soul expert. This had completely exceeded the scope of their understanding. Lin Xian did not stop. His gaze locked on a Black Fiend Patriarch, the wondrous pearl in his sea of consciousness trembling slightly. An incomparably pure spiritual sense power, far surpassing the Foundation Establishment stage, mixed with his will, which had been tempered by lightning tribulation and was incredibly resilient, transformed into an intangible and formless yet unparalleled sharp heartsword, directly striking Black Fiend Patriarch's primordial spirit. The highest profound truth of the concentrated mind and refined spirit art, divine will slash. This was not an attack on the spiritual energy level, but directly targeted the soul. Although Black Fiend Patriarch's cultivation was high, demonic cultivation methods often sought quick success, and their cultivation of the mind was far inferior to orthodox cultivators. The primordial spirit was precisely his weakness. Black Fiend Patriarch let out a piercing shriek, feeling an indescribably sharp sensation pierce deep into his soul. His primordial spirit felt an intense pain as if being torn apart, and more than half of the demonic energy surrounding him instantly dissipated. He looked at Lin Xian in utter terror, as if he had seen a ghost. What kind of technique was this? How could a Foundation establishment cultivator possess such a terrifying spiritual sense attack? You, just who are you? Black Fiend Patriarch's voice trembled, all his previous arrogance gone. Lin Xian did not answer, merely raised his finger again. A dazzling azure light, compressed to its extreme with pure, true essence, condensed at his fingertip. Though lacking grand momentum, it made Black Fiend Patriarch feel a fatal threat. Scram, or die. Lin Xian's voice remained calm, yet carried an unquestionable authority. Black Fiend Patriarch's expression shifted erratically. Ultimately, the fear of death overcame everything. He glared venomously at Lin Xian, then glanced fearfully at the azure cloud sect below. Without a word, he rolled up the remaining demonic clouds and fled in a disheveled manner, his speed more than twice as fast as when he arrived. He came quickly and left even quicker. In the span of just a few words, the nascent soul old devil who had plunged the entire azure cloud sect into despair was effortlessly startled away by Lin Xian. A dead silence filled the world. Everyone stared blankly at the green-robed figure in the sky, as if gazing upon a deity. Immortal Venerable Qingling looked at Lin Xian, her lips trembling. Finally, 1,000 words turned into an incredibly complex sigh, and she bowed deeply. Many thanks, Elder Lin, for taking action and saving my sect from peril. This bow represented her, and also the entire Azure Cloud sect's complete recognition of Lin Xian and submission. Lin Xian slowly descended. He did not look at Immortal Venerable Qingling, but instead swept his gaze over the familiar yet unfamiliar faces below, seeing the shock, gratitude, and deep regret in their eyes. There were no ripples in his heart, and he merely said indifferently, "The karma here is settled. From this day forth, the Azure Cloud sect and I owe each other nothing." With that, he no longer lingered. His figure transformed into a green rainbow, and he returned to Wangyue Peak. It was as if the earth-shattering scene from moments ago was merely him casually brushing away a speck of dust. He came not to save anyone, but merely to sever the last karmic ties with this place. From now on, vast oceans and clear skies, no more worries. Meanwhile, Immortal Venerable Qingling, Su Ru, Lu Xian, and the others who remained watched the direction of his disappearance, a mix of emotions in their hearts. They knew that Lin Xian's last words meant a true farewell. He saved the sect, but also completely severed the last thread of sentiment. The price of this salvation was regret they could never atone for. The news of Black Fiend Patriarch's defeat spread throughout the entire cultivation world faster than the wind. A Foundation establishment cultivator scaring away a nascent soul expert was no longer something that could be described merely as genius. It was almost mythical. Lin Xian's name soared like the sun at its zenith, and the Azure Cloud sect's prestige greatly boosted, with no one daring to offend them. However, Wangyue Peak became even more tranquil. Lin Xian declined all proposals from the sect to hold a celebration for him, and also gently refused the generous resources offered by Immortal Venerable Qingling on behalf of the sect. For him, worldly things of this realm were of no great use anymore. Time flew by, spring went and autumn came, and another 3 years passed. During these 3 years, Lin Xian lived in seclusion. With the assistance of the Immortal Realm Recommendation Token and the Wondrous Pearl in his sea of consciousness, his cultivation advanced rapidly, effortlessly crossing the middle and late Foundation establishment stages, reaching the peak Foundation establishment without any bottlenecks. His foundation was terrifyingly solid. The purity and condensation of his true essence far surpassed his peers by dozens of times, and his spiritual sense strength was comparable to a late core formation cultivator. On this day, above Wangyue Peak, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth once again began to gather unusually. But unlike the wildness of the previous Foundation establishment lightning tribulation, this time the spiritual energy flow appeared exceptionally harmonious and majestic, as if the will of the entire heaven and earth resonated with it. Lin Xian sat quietly on the peak. The aura around him was perfectly harmonious and flawless, having reached the perfect limit attainable by Foundation establishment cultivators in this realm. With a thought, he triggered the long-dormant Immortal Realm Recommendation token in his sea of consciousness. The recommendation token shone brightly, an invisible fluctuation shooting straight into the nine heavens. In an instant, winds rose and clouds surged, 10,000 rays of iridescent light and 1,000 streaks of auspicious colors. The spiritual energy of the entire Azure Cloud sect surged madly towards Wangyue Peak, forming a huge spiritual energy vortex in the sky. At the center of the vortex, space began to distort, and the hazy yet majestic outline of an immortal gate, emitting a supreme aura, slowly condensed. The immortal gate opened. Ascension was imminent. This earth-shattering phenomenon immediately alarmed everyone. Without any notification, all the disciples and elders of the Azure Cloud sect, and even cultivators from surrounding sects who got the news, spontaneously gathered in the sect's plaza and on the peaks, looking up at the miraculous ascension scene, rarely seen in 1,000 years, with incredibly excited and reverent moods. Immortal Venerable Qingling led the elders, standing solemnly at the peak of the main peak, her expression incredibly complex. She looked at the tiny yet incredibly dazzling figure beneath the immortal gate. The last trace of unwillingness in her heart also transformed into relief and deep admiration. She understood that with this child's talent, the Azure Cloud sect could not keep him, nor could this realm. Su Ru and Lu Xian stood in the crowd, looking up at that once incredibly familiar, now distant and unreachable figure, tears silently streaming down. All the little things, their eldest brother's care and tolerance, and their own willfulness and false accusations, surged like a tide in their hearts, turning into bone-gnawing regret. They knew this was the last glance. From now on, immortal and mortal would be forever separated, and they would even lose the right to look up. Yichi did not come. He was still in seclusion in the secret chamber, but the vast might of heaven and earth and the pervading immortal spiritual energy outside could not be isolated. He could feel Lin Xian's majestic aura like the scorching sun, and that immortal gate leading to the realm he had dreamed of. The huge disparity and despair completely shattered his already shaky Dao heart. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, his aura instantly withered, and his eyes were filled with desolation. In the end, he didn't even have the qualifications to become a shadow behind the other. The immortal gate became clearer and clearer, and dazzling, guiding immortal light cascaded down like a waterfall, completely enveloping Lin Xian's figure. Vast and pure immortal spiritual energy permeated the air, causing all the cultivators who felt it to feel their spirits lift, as if even their cultivation had improved slightly. Lin Xian stood amidst the immortal light, his green robes fluttering, black hair dancing. He slowly turned, looking down for the last time upon this land where he had lived for decades, his gaze sweeping over the familiar mountains and rivers, familiar buildings, and familiar faces with varying expressions. His eyes remained calm, without love or hatred, sorrow or joy, like a high and mighty immortal deity, looking down upon the mortal world without any attachments. At the moment his gaze met immortal venerable Qingling's, her body trembled slightly, and her lips moved. Finally, in a voice only she could hear, she murmured, "It is I, your master. I am sorry." Lin Xian seemed to hear it, yet seemed not to. His gaze did not linger, slowly sweeping past, and finally turned back towards the opened immortal gate. There lay a vaster world, a higher great Tao. He raised his foot and took a step. Under countless gazes of shock, envy, regret, and blessing, his figure completely merged into the immortal light, stepping into that gateway to a higher world. The immortal gate slowly closed, the sky-filling phenomena gradually dissipated, and heaven and earth returned to calm. On the summit of Wangyue Peak, it was empty, with only the vast immortal spiritual energy remaining, lingering for a long time, proving that a cultivator once ascended to a higher realm from this place with peerless grace. The entire Azure Cloud sect was in absolute silence. After a long while, no one knew who led it first, but everyone, including immortal venerable Qingling and the elders, bowed deeply towards Wangyue Peak. This bow was to the immortal sign of ascension, to the peerless genius, and even more so, a farewell to a past that left everyone with mixed feelings. Lin Xian left, leaving behind an immortal legend, and also endless regret and self-reflection. And his immortal path in the immortal realm had just begun. The immortal light dissipated, and the phenomena subsided. Inside and outside the Azure Cloud sect, however, for a long time, they could not recover from that shock. Countless people still looked up at the clear sky above Wangyue Peak that had been restored, as if the moment that green-robed figure stepped into the immortal gate had been eternally imprinted in their hearts. On the main peak's summit, immortal venerable Qingling stood alone for a long time. The mountain wind rustled her robes, but could not blow away the lingering complexity between her brows. She finally let out a lingering sigh, a sigh that articulated all the past biases and present relief. Turning, her gaze swept over Su Ru and Lu Xian, still prostrate on the ground and weeping uncontrollably, and then to the distant cultivation chamber, where spiritual energy fluctuations were completely chaotic, symbolizing the crumbling of Yi Chen's Tao heart. Her heart was as clear as a mirror. The Qingyun sect, which had shaken the heavens with the fame of one person, had also had its structure and spirit profoundly changed by that same individual. As the master, it was time for her to make a change. Issue the order. The cool and aloof immortal venerable's voice regained its usual cool aloofness, but now carried a new firmness refined by experience. Moon-gazing Peak is to be designated a forbidden area of the sect. Unauthorized entry is strictly prohibited. Lin Xian's name shall be inscribed in the side hall of the ancestral hall, and his ascension deeds recorded in the sect's historical annals, to warn future generations. Cultivate the Tao by first cultivating the heart, and treat others with fairness. This command drew a respectful conclusion to Lin Xian's presence in the Qingyun sect, and also proclaimed the end of an old era. In the years that followed, within the Qingyun sect, the legend surrounding senior disciple brother Lin Xian not only did not fade with the passage of time, but instead became even more mythical. His deeds of attracting thunder tribulations during Foundation establishment, refusing the immortal envoy from the upper realm, intimidating and repelling an old nascent soul devil with a single finger, and his graceful ascension in the end, were sung by generations of disciples, inspiring countless successors to diligently cultivate. Though Moon-gazing Peak became a forbidden area, it transformed into a holy land yearned for in the hearts of the sect disciples. After experiencing long years of regret and self-exile, Su Ru and Lu Xian ultimately failed to overcome their inner demons, and their cultivation progress was slow. They eventually chose to reside permanently on a small mountain peak near Moon-gazing Peak, living out their remaining years with a solitary lamp and ancient scrolls. Perhaps only in this way could they be closer to that guilt and those memories. Yi Chun, with his Tao heart shattered and cultivation completely crippled, quietly left the Qingyun sect not long after, his whereabouts unknown. Like a drop of water merging into the vast ocean, he was never mentioned again. The cool and aloof immortal venerable, on the other hand, shed her former aloofness and began to genuinely and fairly treat every disciple. The sect's atmosphere was completely renewed. She often stood alone at the summit of the main peak, gazing at moon-gazing peak in the distance. No one knew what she was thinking. Perhaps, through that exceptionally brilliant disciple, she had finally comprehended something more important than cultivation. In the immortal realm, at a certain ascension reception immortal pond, misty immortal chi, like warm spring water, enveloped Lin Xian. Extremely pure, immortal spiritual energy surged wildly into his body, transforming his physical body and condensing immortal essence. When he opened his eyes again, he had completely shed his mortal coil, becoming a true immortal, a human immortal. The sight before him far surpassed the most magnificent imaginings of the lower realm. Immortal mountains floated, jade palaces and grand mansions stood in serried ranks, immortal cranes soared, and auspicious beasts roamed. The air was permeated with a rich Tao rhythm and the aura of laws. An immortal general, clad in immortal armor and with an ancient, simple face, watched him. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. A lower realm cultivator, your foundation is quite solid. Now that you have ascended, you are a member of our immortal realm. This is Immortal Transformation Continent, the first landing place for ascenders from the lower realms. Ahead is Ascension City. You may go to the Ascension Hall in the city to register, claim your Identity Jade token, or you may explore on your own to seek opportunities. The immortal realm is vast. Opportunities and risks coexist. Take care of yourself. The immortal general spoke in a flat tone, in a businesslike manner, and did not pay excessive attention due to Lin Xian's solid foundation. In the immortal realm, geniuses were never rare. Lin Xian's expression was calm, devoid of the fear or excitement of a newcomer to a noble land. He changed into an ordinary green immortal robe, naturally condensed from immortal chi. He felt the immortal essence within his body, far more powerful and pure than true essence, and his spiritual sense, now vaster and more acute. He nodded slightly to the immortal general. Thank you for the guidance. He stepped out of the immortal pond, treading on immortal clouds as soft as cotton. His gaze swept towards the magnificent, colossal city in the distance, surpassing any architecture in the lower realms. In his eyes, there was no confusion, only his usual steadfastness and anticipation. All the myriad things of the lower realm, the grudges and affections, the glorious legends, had become like fleeting clouds. That immortal gate severed not just space, but also the past and the future. Here, he was no longer the senior disciple brother of Qingyan sect. He was no longer a tragedy or a legend in anyone's eyes. He was merely Lin Xian, a human immortal who had just ascended, starting everything anew. The path to immortality is long and arduous. His legend, in the immortal realm, had only just begun its first stroke.